that we developed. There's a user interface, as you can see over there, and we have, it's essentially the classic 4-stage modeling process. But what we've done is put the first 3 stages of the modeling process, which you can see there, the trip attraction and generation, the trip distribution and mode choice elements, within a central repository. So we generally have them communicating with each other, and there's no gaps in the data flow. The trip attraction model essentially takes the competition schedule, the event schedule, the venue capacities, and then works out what's happening where. It then goes into the distribution model phase, which essentially says who is coming from where, who is coming from Manchester, who is coming from Birmingham. It's based on the classic gravity model with some weightings. So your traditional gravity model indicates that if you live in the Outer Hebrides, for instance, you're less likely to travel to London for an event. But in this case, we do know that because you know that the event happens 3 years out, you've been saving, some people have been saving money, and therefore they will make that trip. And so it's not quite as straightforward. So we have some of those weightings based on a number of data sources that I will outline in the next slide. It then goes into the mode choice element, which then indicates what likely modes of travel people are going to use to come to the event. I have to point out that the car option is being switched off there because it's not an option as far as we're concerned. It's a public transport gauge. And that information then branches out into your coach, your rail, your river, and then it goes to the 4th stage, where we then assign those onto the rail plan network, rail plan model, which is essentially the model that captures the underground network, tells us what goes on the Jubilee line and other lines, the Planet, which covers the intercity routes and the suburban services around London. So that's the framework, and we have a user interface, and we have maps, and all that information then feeds to various delivery partners, LUL, TfL, London buses, and they then plan on a consistent basis. In terms of the UK, we have a unified zoning system based on census boundaries, as you can see there. As you can see, it's quite concentrated in the sort of southeast London area, and then as it goes further out, it's less so. To ensure that we have a good coverage and there's that flow of information. What are the parameters in the model? Event variation, multi-ticketing, group sizes, overnight stay, time of travel, regional variations. Weymouth, for instance, have different characteristics from London, and those are captured within that model. I have to say, as I said, a lot of this, I'll come to the data sources, but a lot of this information comes from local knowledge and indeed events elsewhere abroad and in the UK. Paralympics consistent, and the travel needs of mobility impaired and disabled spectators are also factored in there. Data sources, National Travel Survey. We actually have a program of collecting data ourselves, the Olympic Delivery Authority. We've been to the badminton horse trials, the marathon world rowing championships. And from time to time, we carry out surveys. I mean, recently in January, we carried out a 10,000 person survey across the UK, 5,000 by phone, 5,000 by internet, just trying to make sure that we validate all our assumptions and the work we're doing. And, you know, very reassuringly, a lot of our assumptions stood through. So the strategic overview of the modeling process is that it provides us with geographically reliable estimates. The framework is flexible because things change, venues move, so we just make those changes and rerun the model. They're sensitive to travel time and costs, variation, group sizes, multi-ticketing overnight stays, and in the brackets there you see the basis upon which we've made some of these assumptions. In terms of the output from the model, what we generally do have is, this is an example of the Olympic Park. We have demand by 15-minute interval. So these are arrivals and departures at the Olympic Park on day 4, for instance, and it's showing you by 15-minute interval those coming in and those going out, and that's quite helpful in terms of planning, event planning, service planning, especially around the areas where you have overlaps, people coming in and going, how you manage the crowds, and other activities such as those.